Hello everyone, welcome to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I'm your host and head witch, Miss Solaris Blue Raven at the helm this evening. I want to give a shout out to everybody at Revolution Radio, staff, producers, listeners, chat room, and thank everyone for tuning in tonight. And of course, we are 100% listener supported, so if you like what you're listening to, please click on the donate button. We appreciate your support and thank you for any contributions you can make to this excellent station that is growing like, I don't know what, wildfire. I will be taking calls in the second hour, and the number is 347-688-2902 or Freedom Screen on Skype. And, of course, you are listening to Studio A. My special guest this evening is Jim Nichols. Let me read you his bio. Since 1980, noted artist and investigator, lecturer, Jim Nichols has produced an extraordinary body of UFO illustrations that has been published internationally in magazines, articles, books, and the Internet. His art was routinely featured on the History Channel's UFO Hunters, as well in his art book, Case Files Revealed. He shares the untold stories behind 40 of his most dramatic UFO illustrations based on actual accounts. His book is available through his website, and I posted this in the chat room, www.jimnicholsufo.net. And Jim is also winner of the 2 EBE-Awards at 2010's International UFO Conference in Laughlin, Nevada, for his video documentary about Nazi saucers entitled The Aldebaran Mystery, which is also available now as a DVD from UFOTV Productions. And in addition, 13 of Jim's UFO-related video essays are now presented by UFOTV on YouTube, which can be accessed from his website. So please welcome Jim to the show this evening. Jim, how are you?
Oh, very good. Thank you, Solaris. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's nice to hear your voice. You sound good.
Thank you.
Yeah, all right.
Coming through okay? Audio's good?
All right, yeah, indeed.
Okay.
Okay, I was checking your website. Like I said before, I'm just really impressed with your information, your presentations, your artwork, your videos. Everything is awesome. So just want to give you a real, heads up on that. This is incredible work you're doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk a bit about the Aldebaran Mystery and some of the information pertaining to that. And do you think it's safe to say much of the covert UFO blackcraft projects have been assisted by some kind of off-world species?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not real sure.
Yeah.
According to what I did with the Aldebaran Mystery was to I wanted to give an overview of the myth of Nazi saucers. And it is a myth, and part of the main core of that myth is that within the Vril Society, the secret society that developed in Germany between World War I and World War II, allegedly they had made some kind of telepathic contact with a civilization from the Aldebaran star system. And the legend says that that's where they got the technology to build anti-gravity flying discs. And that's a very, very intriguing story. Mm-hmm. But it's virtually impossible to verify it. So, like I say, this is one of the most popular myths that's been floating around the UFO investigating community for a long time. And what I wanted to do is just I had read about it in so many different UFO journals and books and so forth, and it's all fragmented. Mm-hmm. So what I wanted to do was to bring it all together in one, one-stop shop kind of context, just to bring it all together and say, well, this is one of the major UFO stories that has evolved since World War II. And, how much of it is true, how much of it is not true, I can't say, because so much of it is just so much of the hard evidence disappeared at the end of the war. So it's very conjectural, but very, very intriguing.
Yeah, it really is. It's kind of ominous on so many different levels. When I think about that whole scenario, it makes me wonder, with all the MKUltra and the type of covert technology they've been doing, especially with the Nazis, how much of that was actually based on perhaps some kind of a mind control, and also maybe a reinvention of what they've seen or perceived as a UFO. But it's very, very interesting to me insofar as how that all came about, for sure.
Right. Well, one of the other aspects about it, and that people don't make the differentiation, is that there were two separate and distinct programs within the Third Reich to develop flying disc technology. And one, yes, it did involve an exotic anti-gravity kind of propulsion system that allegedly was supplied by extraterrestrials. The other one, though, was more of a conventional vertical takeoff flying machine that would be comparable to the modern helicopter. But it wasn't. It was no exotic technology here. It was, you know, they were using regular turbojet engines and propeller craft that were powered by, you know, regular kerosene aviation fuel. But it's really interesting that one of the craft, and one of my illustrations is a craft called the Flying Top. And essentially, it's like it's a fan with the cockpit in the center, and then these rotating propeller blades that go around the cockpit. And there are accounts in South America after the war of flying machines that matched identical to this design. And also, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Venus Project with Jacques Fresco.
Right, and if you want to kind of run that by our listeners, that would be great.
Well, Jacques Fresco is he's a futurist, and he's designing, you know, really advanced technologies for future future cities. I mean, cities and all kind of super modern technology, ships, cities, transportation systems, and so forth. And it's very, very high tech, and it's very, very futuristic. But my point is that one of the flying machines that he's designed for the Venus Project is virtually identical to the Schreiber Flying Top from Germany in World War II. It's like the cockpit is a central sphere with these fan blades or propellers that go around the central cockpit. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? And here, all these years later, that same technology is kind of quietly resurfacing.
It certainly is. That's very interesting on that. Just so you know, there might be a glitch with your, I tried to put your link into the chat room for your website, and we're having some issues with possible virus. So just a heads up. Yeah, I just want to give you a heads up on that. But people try to access it. I mean, I didn't have a problem getting in there, so I don't know what's going on with that. So unless they're trying to go after your site or something.
It's JimNicholsUFO.net?
That's correct. Yeah, let me double check that, but I'm pretty sure. Right. So, yeah. So.
Well, things are glitchy anymore.
They are glitchy, a little bit anyways. But insofar as, you know, it's really interesting talking about this, but I'm looking at the whole agenda based on this whole thing insofar as what the Nazis are really after. And I'm thinking to myself, why do you think an off-world species would even assist with a negative agenda against this blue world? I mean, in general, just theoretically speaking, I mean, what's your impression of that?
Wow. Well, if you look at the German, their research into ancient technologies, and their research into ancient Tibet and ancient India and ancient Babylon and all this stuff, there's powerful suggestion throughout all these ancient civilizations that there was at one time an extremely advanced civilization that once flourished on this planet. And we know the legends of Atlantis and Lemuria and all these other stories. And the Germans took that very, very seriously. And actually, if you dig into any of the esoteric secret societies around the world, they all seem to carry the same theme, that at one time there was an extremely high cultural civilization that dominated this planet, and it had free energy, and they were very much connected with quantum physics. They had a clear understanding of the quantum field and how this planet was affected by other planets, and how the whole universe worked together as a holographic whole, okay, as a holographic unit. So, really, if there were a serious extraterrestrial component actually comes in with this ancient civilization. Was this an ancient Earth human civilization, or was it an ancient extraterrestrial civilization? And was planet Earth actually just a territory that a much more advanced extraterrestrial civilizations were in conflict about? That there was a contest to say, well, who owns this territory? Well, we own it. Well, no, you don't own it. And were there battles? Were there ancient battles in ancient times fighting over who owned the territory of planet Earth?
Right, especially the technological wars, which, I get that same thing also insofar as what they were really doing. But it seems to be paralleling once again on this timeline, of course. And also the different races. I mean, I look at it that we have a lot of different species on this planet massed in a matrix of a body, what people call the human body, which I feel is just, kind of a disservice because it's really just a vessel for the consciousness and what we really are. But I find that whole, I find Atlantis very, very intriguing, of course, and Lemuria, but it does make sense how they would be sort of infatuated with that whole situation insofar as the type of civilization goes. That's pretty interesting.
The Vril Society actually drew their historical roots from Teutonic Templars back during the 13th century, who claimed that they had been in contact with extraterrestrials from the constellation Taurus and from a planet that was called Aldebaran. And according to that tradition, the ancient civilization of Sumeria was a colony created by the beings from Aldebaran. And one of the things that the Germans were very interested in, and this relates to their concept of the Aryan race, the superiority of the Aryan race, they traced back to the civilization from Aldebaran. And what they learned from the people of Aldebaran is the reason that their civilization was so successful was because it was a civilization made up of only one race. There was no racial diversity. And so, whether it's right or wrong, this is what fueled a lot of the emotion and focus of the Nazi regime to create a pure Aryan race, because they wanted to mimic or recreate here a civilization that was like a mirror of that civilization from the Aldebaran star system.
And it kind of makes sense in a strange way.
Like I say, this is legend within, the rise of the Third Reich. Now, how much of this is true, how much is not true, it's up to, it's anybody's guess. But the bottom line is that the Nazis believed this enough to go to war over it.
Right. Yeah.
So that's where it all ends up.
And they're still, they didn't lose the war in my opinion. And insofar as the technology goes, it just kind of transferred and around other areas across the globe. But there is so much pertaining to that. With the transhumanism agenda, insofar as, man integrating with machines, that's all part of this whole thing, in my opinion. I think that's part of a completion cycle with them trying to redefine the genetic code of their own ancestry.
Exactly. Well, that's one of the things, and I've been reading the books of Joseph Farrell, Dr. Joseph Farrell, who's an extraordinary, prolific Oxford scholar researcher, and that's been the focus of his research, is that the secret societies, the Nazis, the Zionists, the Illuminati, the Freemasons, they all retain a portion of this ancient knowledge, this esoteric knowledge, and that what they are doing actually is to recreate Atlantis here. That's their goal, is to recreate Atlantis. Atlantis, and even with like the transhumanist agenda that you see that's unfolding to create a race of robots. It's like, my God, is this what Atlantis was all about? Is this the incredible technology that the Atlanteans actually had, and did Atlantis was ultimately destroyed because they misused this technology?
Right. Yeah, I don't know if I won't go into details with it, but I did have a regression done on that, and it was pretty interesting, a past life thing that was done on me years ago in the 90s. But I can tell you that, yeah, I think anybody who's done any real research or has any intuition would say, yeah, they did have a huge technological war and battle. And it was about control and manipulation and, of course, psychic wars and telepathic wars. And that's going on now. And now they can do that through the artificial intelligence. Like I said, I was a test pilot for some of that synthetic telepathy. So that just piggybacks off of natural clairvoyant abilities and natural telepathic abilities. We have the gifts. But it's kind of like, I think there are people who want to play God, trying to decide who gets to access their higher consciousness and their avatar abilities versus, those who cannot. You know what I mean? So there's definitely some control and some real players on this planet right now. I see anyway.
Well, the trick is that if you have a secret society, having a secret society is conspiratorial to begin with. And I love that the Freemasons say, well, they're always being blamed for conspiracies. But it's like, well, if you have a secret society where you have secret handshakes and secret rituals and so forth, well, that is conspiratorial to begin with, in and of itself. So, and then you have like the pyramid structure within each of these secret societies. So you always have an elite cadre at the very top who know exactly what's going on and why. And the mass population, either within or without the secret society, has not a clue what the ultimate agenda is. So it's there seems to be a central focus where all this is heading, and like I say, it seems to be to recreate this ancient Atlantean, and I use Atlantis. It doesn't, whether it was really called Atlantis or not is immaterial. It's this ancient high civilization that once flourished here, and I think we're seeing it being resurrected.
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree with you, James. But I also feel that those of us, I believe in old souls and I believe in ancient souls. And I think that there are those of us here who have been there before that are actually on this timeline now, kind of reactivated to some degree, and also I guess it's just addressing the whole lifetime, I guess, on some levels for everybody. I mean, it's just, there's something going on a bigger scale with that for sure.
Well, I look at my own, the path of my own research, and I can't quite figure out why I pursue this line of research, and yet I can't not do it. And I'm thinking, is this driven? Is this research driven from a very primal memory within myself? That I remember these times, and I remember that because this technology wasn't used responsibly, that we virtually lost the planet because of it. And so, maybe that's what drives me. I can't answer why I do this.
It sounds like it too. I mean, it's kind of like an internal cellular activation on some levels. I get the same thing. I mean, I'm very much, I didn't ask to go on this path. I mean, it just happened. I swear. I mean, it's amazing how all these things just kind of unravel before my eyes. And so I find it to be I guess it's kind of fated on some level. There's something about it that seems fated anyway. But I was going to ask you about the Vril Society a little bit more. I know we talked about it briefly, but I really find this group intriguing, and I have a resonance with the type of technology merged with the psychic design, which appears they were involved in. But can you elaborate on this society, and do you think they are still operating today?
Wow. I came across a website, and maybe I can dig through some of my files and send this statement to you later this week. But anyway, that the ladies from the Vril Society have reorganized, and that the Vril Society it's very secret. But yeah, it has resurrected itself. But anyway, back in 1919, there was this. The core of the Vril Society is around a lady named Maria Orsic, and she was a very, very gifted psychic, channeler. I think today she would be the equivalent of remote viewer. And she had a team actually that worked with her of young ladies, and one of their trademark or their hallmark was they wore their hair ankle length, and that they claimed that their hair acted as psychic antennas, so that they were able to be such highly gifted intuitives. Well, anyway, they claimed that they were in touch with a group, like I said before, from the Aldebaran star system, and they had channeled automatic writing and designs, craft designs, and they couldn't interpret it. They channeled the material, but they didn't know what they were channeling. And some of the other members of the Vril Society were scholars from the University of Munich, I believe, who were both scientists, physicists, but they were also Oriental scholars. And what they discovered was that this writing was an old Templar code, which they were able to translate. And through the translation, they were able to discern that they were getting instructions for building what they said was a time machine. And so some of the physicists from the University of Munich were so intrigued by this, they thought, well, let's try to build this damn thing. And they found that the technology worked. And what they were using were counter-rotating fields of mercury plasma. And what it did was created an electromagnetic envelope around the craft that made it function independent of the gravity system of the gravity pull of planet Earth. So essentially they were tapping into the unified field.
Right. Like 0 point.
Yes, 0 point energy. And actually, if you go back and read some of the quotes of Nikola Tesla back as early as 1908, he was describing the same thing, that if you with counter rotating, if you create a spin with counter rotating, it could be water or mercury or some kind of medium, that you can create an independent electromagnetic field that would give you a propulsion system that would be independent of our gravity and also independent of the time-space continuum that we are in.
Yeah.
So, as I understand it, at least by the early 1920s, they had played around with this technology enough to where they thought, yeah, this really works, and there's a viable technology here. So the Vril Society was also became affiliated with the Thule Society, and it was from the Thule Society, which was more political. The Vril seemed to be more esoteric, and the Thule Society seemed to be more political, and it was out of the Thule Society that the National Socialist movement arose. So I think it was the Vril Society accessed this technology from extraterrestrials or whatever. The Thule Society saw the possible weapons potential in this, and then eventually it got folded into the SS, which was Heinrich Himmler's esoteric group within the Nazi Third Reich. And then I think it kind of went in all different directions after that.
It certainly seems like it. It also reminds me of the wheels within wheels. Once again, it reminds me of the
Oh,
Merkaba, you know, the
yes,
sacred
yes,
design. I mean, it's exactly like that.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And
counter-rotating fields, and then yeah, one would be gravitational. I would
sure,
consider clockwise to be gravitational, and then
sure.
counterclockwise to be anti-gravity.
Uh-huh.
So yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I could see the mechanics of it. It's really
yeah.
quite fascinating, and why we're not really going full speed ahead with this and just letting it come out in the open, obviously, is because of control and manipulation.
Well, that's
So
part of it.
yeah,
And you can say, well, the Germans are just wackos because they were into the occult and this and that. Well, they were not wackos at all. They wanted to liberate themselves from the domination of the American British petroleum industries.
hmm
Um, the Third Reich wanted to create an independent energy source that would give them total autonomy worldwide for the Third Reich. And so you can see that the potential within this technology is wow. It's like people within the Third Reich would find this very, very interesting. Now, and this, my research in this has always been from the UFO standpoint, and I've always thought, well, flying disc technology would be the be all and the end all technology of this unified field technology. And I don't think that's necessarily true, and I think this leads into the development of the Bell, the Diglocka
hmm
technology, which was being worked on also during the war. Because you can take the same technology and you can use it. Yes, you can use it for time travel or space travel or just a simple flying machine. Or you could ramp up the power of this technology and use it as a weapon.
right.
That you could develop this into a weapon that would make the atomic bomb or the hydrogen bomb look like a 4th of July firecracker.
hmm
So yeah, on one hand, this is wonderful. It's revolutionary. It would be, it would be free energy, and it has tremendous positive potential. But the downside of it, and this is one of the other things that Nikola Tesla warned about in 1908, that this technology could be used to develop weapons that could actually destroy an entire planet. Not just a city, not just a country, but an entire planet.
Right. That's pretty intense.
So this is, it's like you're absolutely tapping into the fundamental core energy of the universe itself.
Right. Yeah, and it's everywhere. I mean, that energy, it's everywhere. It's infinite.
So,
So,
right. And so you look at what we did with the atom,
hmm
and it's like, well, if there's ETs out there watching us and they discovered that in 1945 we're setting off atomic bombs, they say, well, the monkeys found the box of matches.
that's so true.
And
They can't get along. I mean, people on this
right.
planet can't get along.
So,
Okay.
yeah, the other downside of this technology is if it gets proliferated into the hands of terrorist groups.
hmm
So yeah, on one hand, we can rant and rave and complain to the military-industrial complex why we don't have free energy and why I still have to buy my gas at Exxon. Or we could have free energy, but there are enough diabolical minds out there that could actually twist this energy into something just totally horrific.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense to me. The more I dig into information and the more I access the truth, the more I realize how I can understand why they keep a lot of it secret. I really
Yes.
can. And
Yeah.
I think about that with my own information. I'm like, wow, the more I
Right.
know, the more I'm like, yeah, I can understand why they don't talk about it. I
Right.
really do. So
Right.
I can't blame them and I can't fault them at that because right now it's like a society or a civilization that's a little bit flawed on the, on consciousness level. They're just not there to be enlightened enough not to misuse technology.
Right. Right. So
That's really kind of a shame.
So will we create the destruction of Atlantis all over again here?
Right. Well, I've been
And
there,
that
done that.
we are at that point in human development right now. It's like it's, are we going to make it or not?
Right, and it's always the same cycles, the same patterns recreated over and over again. It's like, how many times do you have to live a lifeline or a lifetime, rather, insofar as not, don't they ever learn their lessons is really the message behind it all. It's like, do they have to keep repeating the same activity over and over again? How many cycles, how many wars,
Well, that's my question to you as with your psychic background is, are we on a linear path or are we on a circular path?
Well, I think we're on a multidimensional path, which is neither, actually. But I feel like mankind, and in answer to a lot of what you just said, mankind, and insofar as where they're at with the governments and these cabals, they're very linear, absolutely. And that's one of the problems we have, is that everything is kind of, it's kind of a trap of collectives and a trap of consciousness, because they're controlled and manipulated by their own ignorance right now. And of course, the need to control and manipulate others even flatlines their whole civilization out. So I'd see them as, if they would just activate on a higher level, we would have multidimensional, multiversal consciousness, and everybody would just be progressing to a higher overtone of their own design, but they're not willing to do that. I mean, you have to let go of the old to bring in the new. We all know that.
That's true. And, even the Germans, if they really did, contact civilization on Aldebaran, it sounds like even the people on Aldebaran more or less have their act together. and I can't say that for the humans of this planet.
No, whenever I see people talking about, they're looking for the extraterrestrials, I'm like, well, we are our ancestors. We are those star beings, and that's us. Right. So we're here, and we have responsibility. And I don't think they realize that they are the ones that are empowered, because they have been disempowered for so long and for so many centuries, But it's really about self-empowerment and then enlightenment, and of course, understanding the bigger picture of things.
Well, it was the Billy Meyer case that got me involved in this to begin with, back in 1980, and I can't help but hark back to some of the statements of the Pleiadians that Billy Meyer claims to have had contact with, and he asked them, he says, why don't you just show up on a mass scale to show everybody your reality? And they said, it would not. The humans of this planet are not ready for that. And it's simply because it's like, well, if you don't know who you are, what good does it do for me to tell you who I am? And humans fundamentally don't know who they are.
Right.
And they don't realize their own spirituality. They don't realize, their own profound potential. And it's like, and at the end of the day, it's like, well, actually, if there's beings on the other side of Alpha Centauri, at the core, we're the same. We're just expressions of consciousness. We're just expressions of the unified field. And so in that sense, we're all one. We're all part of the same family. So it's like, the real aliens are the humans of Earth who are alienated from themselves.
Yeah, well said.
And that's the real tragedy here, I think.
That's so spot on. Yeah, it's exactly what's happening here on this world. And like I said, I'm hoping that they'll get it together and activate. But it takes a choice. It takes the free will to decide whether it wants to evolve and grow. But I do think a lot of that is due to the censorship throughout history, and the fact that they've lost their heritage. And when I mean heritage, I mean celestial heritage. They're things that should have been disclosed to the masses that would have empowered them, that has, they just don't know about. So.
Well, a lot of this has been deliberately held from the masses, and this is, and I have to fault the secret societies for that, because I believe that they have retained the true history of Earth humans, and they have made sure that the Earth humans do not know that history. What the history we were taught in our education system, through the media and so on and so forth, is a fabrication, and it's designed to keep this other higher esoteric knowledge away from us. So and we were talking about this the other day. It's like you ask anybody in the street, it says, did you like history in school? No, I hated history. I don't like history. And you ask them just fundamental questions about who was the president, who's George Washington, who is Abraham Lincoln, and a lot of them have not a clue who these people were.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that happened a long time ago, so that has nothing to do with me. And that's the mindset that has been created or foisted upon our civilization. When the people in power, the people who are the real managers here have absolute full knowledge of who we are and where we came from. And that's one of the biggest secrets of all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. But also, I think those of us, as I said before, those of us who are old souls have a tendency to access that. I mean, I already have information that I don't need to access their secret societies to know about. I mean, I'm not saying I have every single answer, but I certainly am close. So, and I believe that a lot of other beings are too, such as yourself. I mean, we know deep down, we know our celestial heritage, and we know how to access that through consciousness and higher consciousness. And that goes for our avatar abilities too. I mean, once you start opening up those doors, the energy just starts to flow and the activation happens, and it's all by the law of grace. I mean, it's not by control and manipulation, because the universe doesn't work that way. Mankind does. Right. So it's really interesting, and it's really complex on so many different levels. But I was going to ask you a little bit about the Gnostic Templar and the Lords of the Black Stone, and what their agenda really involved.
Well, that was the group that originally claimed to have, they were Teutonic Knights, which means they were German Templar Knights, and the Templars, you know, my God, so much of the esoteric history of the Freemasons and the Illuminati and so forth goes back to the Templars, the Knights Templar, and the esoteric knowledge that they had access to in the Middle East, during the time of the Crusades. And apparently this one Teutonic group, and they call themselves the Lords of the Black Stone, and I'm not really sure what the meaning of the Black Stone was, but essentially this group claimed that they had made physical face-to-face contact with these extraterrestrials from Aldebaran. And that's what, and the Vril Society claimed that was their heritage from this tradition from these Teutonic Knights.
Well, so you're talking different timelines too, so that's kind of interesting. Part of me would say, well, maybe that was kind of formulated by the Third Reich, with some sort of a mind control and genetic manipulation and engineering, presenting some kind of an extraterrestrial, or what would appear to be an extraterrestrial, but actually just having somebody genetically modified to appear as maybe a Pleiadian or something. I always thought about that, like maybe it's just a mind game and maybe it has nothing to do with extraterrestrials. But when you go back into the illusion of history and go back, a few centuries here and there, I mean, we obviously have had contact with the off-world intelligence of some kind, for sure.
Well, you go all the way back to the Sumerian traditions. You go back to the Old Testament, and they all make reference to the Shining Ones. These I don't know if they're extra-dimensional, extraterrestrial, but these spiritual entities or whatever that came here to impart knowledge to the Earth humans. Mm-hmm. And it was, even, the ancient civilization of Sumeria just seemed to come out of nowhere. And they had sophisticated architecture. They had sophisticated agriculture. They had a very, very sophisticated human civilization that just appeared out of nowhere. And they were just, the Sumerians were just real upfront about it. I said, well, where did we learn this? Well, we were taught this by the gods, these beings that came from the sky. And we referred to them as the Anunnaki. And were they extraterrestrials? Were they extra-dimensionals? I don't know, but they have they had a profound influence on human civilization, and that influence has not gone away.
I agree with that, and a lot of people have a lot of fear associated with the Anunnaki, and I have the complete opposite, actually, with that whole race. I don't get a negative off of them at all. I mean, I don't know what your take is insofar as some of the things they talk about with the gold and this and that, and the mining. Yes. Do you resonate with that?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Really? Can you elaborate a little bit on it?
Well, I think there's a direct link between our own, how we value gold, and gold has been a primary source of monetary exchange throughout human history. But I rather suspect that it's not because it's pretty or because it's rare. I think it has a very, very specific purpose. And I don't know if if you read anything about monatomic gold.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think it's so ironic that you can go to the grocery store and buy gold medal flour, and that's a play on words. It's gold metal, gold metal. What the ancients were able to do with their alchemy was to reduce gold down to a fine white powder, gold metal flour, which was edible.
Right.
And and I'm sure you're familiar with the fact that the ancient Egyptians revered this metal, revered this white powder, because the pharaohs and the priests would ingest this powder to give them higher consciousness and to extend their lives. It gives life extension. So the gold metal had a very, very profound esoteric alchemical value, much more so than just monetary. And according to the Anunnaki, that's why they came here, was primarily to mine gold from planet Earth. And some of the most ancient evidence of civilization on the planet are gold mines that have been found around, I think, the Middle East and Africa. So
interesting. I don't know if you've taken monoatomic gold before, but I have. It's extremely powerful, and it does smooth out the neural circuitry. And actually, that was recommended to me when I was interconnected with this program. When I got tagged with it in 2004 by a paramedic, believe it or not.
Really?
Yes.
You've tried monatomic gold.
Oh yeah, I like it. Yeah, you have to do it in small doses, but yeah, it definitely is very good for your consciousness and smoothing out the circuitry in the brain. Yeah.
Right. Well, as I understand it, it will actually reorganize or refurbish your DNA.
I believe it. Yeah.
So anyway, the ancients, they had a different value system, and they knew what gold was all about. I mean, you can there's references to this even in the Bible. I think they called it the shewbread. And the Egyptians they baked these little white cones, and they would use this gold metal flour.
That's interesting, huh?
No, I think that's such a great pun, gold metal flour, and you see that in so many of the hieroglyphs that they're offering these little cone-shaped biscuits or whatever they are to the priests or to the pharaohs. And this is important stuff. I mean, this was a big deal for the Egyptians, and it's like, yeah, we are so far removed from this ancient knowledge and so forth.
It's really a shame. I mean, we're right here on the planet with all the energy and the information is right there for us, yet we're not accessing it. That's shameful, isn't it?
Yes.
Gosh, I love what that statement you said. The universe is an ocean of limitless energy.
Yes.
That's so true. It's so true, and it's so beautiful. And when you think about that, I mean, we can breathe in that energy every single day and have that resonance with Source. Right. But I do believe that the 0-point energy is really key on this world, and so far as covert energies or covert technologies rather, I think that's a real key thing, definitely.
Well, the ancients called it materia prima. And that was to be able to manipulate and control materia prima was the ultimate alchemical science.
Right.
And you see, well, that's what they're look what they're doing with CERN, and look what our scientists are obsessed with today with unified field. It's like that is materia prima, and it's like we're finally playing with the core stuff of the universe, and you do make the point that stuff is what makes up our bodies and our consciousness, and this is just very, very profound esoteric stuff.
I agree. We were talking about CERN the other day, and the theory of, I don't know if it was you, I think it was you I was talking to, and so far as synthetic black holes go, and how it's quite easy to do that. And
Right.
that's an old Atlantean thing. I mean, creating,
Uh-huh.
synthesizing black holes. I mean, and then you talked about, I think it was you that was talking about the different wormholes, insofar as the theory of wormholes or connecting two star systems. And I'm thinking to myself, well, would that be something of a black hole preceding a white hole, perhaps interconnected on, or something separate? I mean, what is your take on that?
Well, I'm not really that well versed in my physics, but it was Ben Rich, who was the head of the Skunk Works at Area 51, who kind of let the cat out of the bag when he said, well, he made the comment that, we have the technology now where we can take ET home.
Right, yeah, right, yeah.
We can take ET home. And he said, what they learned was that all points in space-time are connected.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's a wormhole or whether it's like a string theory network or web within the unified field that connects everything in the universe, that there's a discrete web or link between Earth and Mars, between Earth and Alpha Centauri, between, wherever you want to go. Mm-hmm. And if you can access that link, you can go there faster than light speed.
Mm-hmm. That makes perfect
sense. And it's like, okay, well, this is probably what the extraterrestrials, if that's what they were, who visited Samaria, that's how they get around. And it's like, it's no big deal. It's like, it's no more exotic than, you and I running down to Circle K.
Right.
This is how you get from here to there in the universe. Right. What's the big deal?
Yeah. It's interesting. It reminds me of consciousness in motion insofar as I never looked at the craft. I mean, I find UFOs to be fascinating, but there's a side to me that just thinks we can phase shift and bilocate with consciousness in motion if we're calibrated to the right frequencies and harmonics, because the body will accommodate it. The body will accommodate the harmonics associated, especially us, because of what we're composed of. So I find that so interesting. And yeah, if I had my way, I'd be out in the universe right now, just kind of cruising around from planet to planet, having fun.
Yeah. I'm old school. I still would have fun flying around in a UFO and a flying saucer. Yeah. But you're right. It's like, you get to the point, well, what do I need a flying saucer for? Mm-hmm. And have you seen the movie John Carter?
No.
Oh, Solaris, by all means, watch John Carter.
Yeah.
It's a Disney movie. They finally made the old Edgar Rice Burroughs, John Carter and the Princess of Mars into a movie.
Oh, wow.
This is classic science fiction that way predates Star Wars or any of that other stuff. But you see that Star Wars and George Lucas was doing nothing but ripping off Edgar Rice Burroughs and his John Carter of Mars series. Mm-hmm. But the beauty of it is, here's a Disney movie that in 2012 shows John Carter can teleport from planet Earth to Mars. It shows teleportation. It's like they are demonstrating the very theme that Ben Rich is talking about, that all points in space and time are connected. And there's a beautiful scene in the movie where there's this like grid that they discover within this cave, and they access this kind of electronic grid that shows that all the points in our solar system are connected. And that's how John Carter, Civil War captain from Virginia, just happened to blunder onto planet Mars.
Nice.
It's a great movie. You got to see it.
Oh, definitely. I'll check it out. I don't watch a lot of movies, but I'll check that one out for sure.
But this is worth watching because you think, okay, Disney Corporation is telling you this is how it works. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're showing you this is how teleportation works. This is the fundamental concept of teleportation.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it amazing how many movies are relayed with some truth in them, especially the science fictions?
I went to see, that was one of those 3D movies that a friend and I went to see, just for something to do, Mm-hmm. And I'm watching this movie and I about fell out of my chair. I about fell out of this theater seat because I couldn't believe Disney was the Disney Corporation is telling you right here in front of your face what's going on. So
That's
it's like, wow.
Well, Tron was one of those too. You know, there's a lot of truth to Tron, big time. Yeah, it's like that whole thing.
So you know, it's out there. The truth is out there, and it's embedded here and there. And if you understand, once you dig into this stuff, you start to see it. You start to see what is being, slowly dropped into the public consciousness.
Right. And I think the biggest thing I have a problem with is the fact that they put this yoke over our civilization as far as just the linear drama that's created from day to day that distracts the masses from even glimpsing at this type of information. You know, they're so busy in their little orbits doing mundane things and getting distracted.
That's true. That's true. And the luxury I have, I guess, being retired, is that I can do this research. I can go online and do this research. Mm-hmm. But Solaris, it's all hidden in plain sight.
Yep.
It's all hidden. It's like, if you make the effort to look for it and you start to connect the dots, you see this is all hidden in plain sight. Mm-hmm. But you have to make the effort to go look for it. Don't wait for them to tell you on CNN News what's going on, because they won't. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, it's like once you start digging into the history of, secret societies and the real society and the Third Reich and, what happened in South America after World War II, where did the Germans go? Mm-hmm. And you start to discover all this other stuff that just never makes the history books. But it's there. It's out there.
It's almost like a shame to go to school these days because you're not even taught the correct information.
No.
I feel sorry for these kids. They're not even getting truth. I mean, it's shameful. Like I said, it's just...
You have to listen to the Solaris radio show to get the truth.
There you go. And you have to be coming back on my show, too, by the way. Oh, we're heading for a break here. We'll be right back. Ravenstar's Witching Hour with James Nichols. Stay tuned.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Most guys freeze. That's your cerebral cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain knows you're screwed.
The body's filling with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. Your heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. The neurobiological system is telling it to run, but your knees are too weak to move.
Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting the danger. Unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio. Is your data safe? you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation. Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it. I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome back, everybody, to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I'm your host, Solaris Blue Ribbon, and I'm here with my special guest, James Nichols. And, of course, we have a caller already, and it's Mr. Robert Pepino. Are you there?
Hello.
Robert, are you on mute?
I am here.
Hi.
I am here. Just had to unmute. How are
right.
you? Peter?
I'm
How
good.
are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? You doing okay?
I'm doing great. Solaris, I love your show.
Thank you.
Always have great guests on, and Mr. Nichols and I have been longtime friends. James, how are you, my friend?
Robert, long time no hear.
It has been a long time. How have you been?
I've been good. How are you?
You know what? I've been working my patooties off, taking care of my father
Right.
since he had a stroke.
Okay. I know what that's like. I've been there.
Right. But it's great to hear your voice. In what? By the way, I'm sorry, Jim. I'm probably a little dated on the material you've been putting out lately, and I just popped on now at Solaris, so So I don't want to make an ass out of myself. What was the subject? Because Jim, I know you've talked. I mean, your video presentations that you put out on so many subjects have been enormous, and it goes in great depth. But I heard you talk about the vril, and that's a subject that you could do hundreds of hours on that subject alone. If I'm not mistaken, was that what you were just talking about?
Yeah, we were kind of kicking around the Aldebaran Mystery about the German saucer projects and the vril and the Thule Society and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay. I think we've talked about that before on your show, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I guess one of the questions that maybe I never asked you, maybe I did, or I just don't remember, is that group of people, part of that vril society that started in Germany, and I'm very, I know that it started there, but there was a group, I think around 20 or 25 people, mostly all scientists, who basically went on an excursion and basically disappeared. Am I correct?
Well, I'm not. Keep going. Tell me more about where you're headed here.
Okay, it was part of the Vril Society, and they had made contact with the Aldebarans. Okay, right. And they had gone to a specific place to say that hey, we are being picked up. We are going out of here, and there was. This is the really strange part, and I don't know if you've ever seen this video footage, but it's been put on YouTube that, of course it was film back then, but digitized into the digital media that we use now, of footage that was found of these folks who were part of the Vril Society, who were going to Aldebaran. They met, or they met together and then took basically I guess a secret bus trip together to a certain location, and the video basically shows the folks there, a flash of light, and then everything disappears. Are you familiar with this little small piece?
No, and in fact, if you have the link to that, I would like to see it.
You know what? I will find it for you, Jim.
Let's do.
But it was amazing.
The only thing I can address to that is that just before the end of the war, Maria Orsic sent a cryptic message to all the members of the Vril Society saying none are staying. And after that, she disappeared. Hans Kammler, the SS commander who was in charge of all the secret high-tech technology operations of the Third Reich, also disappeared. Now, whether they went to Aldebaran, whether they went to the Antarctic, whether they went to Argentina, I have no idea.
And that's the other question. That was the other question.
But they all disappeared.
Wow.
Well, what about because the Thule Society was very much ingrained or involved, or a section or a sectarian section of the Vril Society, and this is where I find the confusion, because they talk about the Thule Society, they talk about the Vril Society.
Right.
There's like I guess there's a fine line between the both, and was one of these succeeding parties more powerful than the other, and did simply merge together, but we are still recognizing them as two separate entities? Or was it a merger between Thule and the Vril Society?
Yeah, I just on my take alone, and I could be wrong on this, but my sense is that the Vril Society was much more esoteric. They were much more interested in, and they were like remote viewers. This is like state-of-the-art remote viewing. And I think that was their area of expertise, where the Thule Society was more political. And it was the National Socialist Party and the SS kind of evolved from the Thule Society. And I could be wrong, but I always got the sense that the Thule Society was kind of interested in exploiting the Vril Society for their own military purposes. I could be wrong about that, but that's the sense I always got, and that the Vril ladies, were not about World War II. They were more about esoteric aspects of the remote viewing that they were doing.
I'm just wondering if part of that was hijacked by the Nazi Party as well.
Well, that's just the point. You had other people like Heinrich Himmler later on, and actually it was members of the Vril or the Thule Society that groomed Adolf Hitler to be the leader of National Socialism. So like I said, it's like they didn't seem to be as esoterically oriented as they were politically oriented, and they seemed to be more militant in their political interests. Now that's just my take on it. It's interesting though that these were secret societies, and that after the Third Reich gained power, all other secret societies, especially the Freemasons, were outlawed in Germany. So the only, as I understand it, the only viable secret societies that the German Reich recognized would be the Vril and the Thule Society.
That's interesting. And we also have been joined by Michael Hemmingson. Hi, Michael.
Hey, what's going on?
Oh, everything and nothing. How are you doing?
All right.
Good. You have a question for James?
No, I just heard Robert saying, I think what he was saying was that some of them had to, they took one of the ships they built to Aldebaran, and it came back all beat up and fried, and people were missing.
Actually, Michael,
Well,
what I said is,
yeah.
I'm sorry, James, really quick. All I said was that that they were going to be transported, or from my eyes and the small video clip that was shown, basically said, depicts that they were brought on a craft and brought to Aldebaran, and that's as far as I know. I don't know about any ship being beat up or anything like that. I've never heard that.
No, they actually built the ship. The Aldebarans were transmitting through those women the designs on how to make the ship.
Yeah, that's what James was talking about, weren't you, James, earlier?
Yeah. Now, in my, if you watch my video, The Aldebaran Mystery, what I covered, in 1943, they built, I think the Vril 7 is what it was called, and they wanted to send that through the Dimension Channel to Aldebaran, because Heinrich Himmler and Adolf Hitler had this idea that maybe, since they thought they were losing the war, that maybe the Aldebarans would step in and assist the efforts of the Third Reich. So, as the legend goes, they sent the Vril 7 into the dimensional channel, and there's two versions of this story. One says it came back and it looked like it was all beat up, and it looked like it had been traveling for 100 years. And I got another version of that story I got from Wendell Stevens, and he said no. He says the Vril 7 stayed on Aldebaran, and the Aldebarans were kind enough to repair it, but the crew decided that they didn't want to come back. So that, it's all conjectural. You can make of it what you will, but that's another variation on that story.
Well, who would want to come back?
Well, that's the point. I mean, as I understand it, Aldebaran would have been like a utopia to the people of the Third Reich, and it's like, well, geez, this is what we wanted to, create on planet Earth. Why go back? So,
well, Jim, I mean,
yes.
I spent 4.5 months in Utopia, and they brought me back within an hour, and then they basically told me that if we let you know everything you experienced, you'd probably go throw yourself off a bridge because you won't want to finish, the task that you put yourself here to finish. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's quite the
my story, because I came down and did a presentation for you, which, by the way, I really, really enjoyed doing.
Yes.
Nice. I'll have to have you on my show sometime, Robert. You can talk about that.
It's hilarious. I would do that anytime for you, my dear. Anytime.
And I just have a quick interjection here. There is someone in the chat that asked, is Earth the only planet with gold? And that was from Frank NKRSNA. So what's your take on that, James?
I would say no.
Yeah, I would say that too. Okay.
No,
I'm trying to handle some questions in there, you guys. Put them in all caps so I can see them clearly. Thank you. And I'll try to stick them out here. Okay.
Yes, the hosts here are old and blind like myself.
Well, not I. Not yet. I'm still alive. Not quite decrepit. Right?
There's plenty of gold on Mars.
Yep, there you go. Yeah,
well, the other thing is if you have a high enough technology, you can create gold. You can just alter the electromagnetic design of whatever metal you're working with, and just re-engineer it into gold.
Right, alchemy.
That's all. Yeah, bingo.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's very, very interesting. So, what is your take on the living holographic universe, body and mind? Obviously, you have a resonance with that, right?
You asking me?
Yes.
A holographic universe? Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's spot on.
Yeah, that's what I take. And also, gentlemen, you're more than welcome to hang out and stay if you like. Robert and Michael, if you're there.
Oh, thank you, Solaris. Thank you. I would love to.
Okay. And if you guys have any questions, just interject as I go along the list here. I was going to ask you regarding Operation High Jump. I know, do you feel that the battle spoken was really between UFOs from off-world intelligence, or do you think it was a man-made UFO created by the Nazis?
The more I dig into that, the more I just don't know what happened down there. At at face value, it would appear that that was a military task force sent down there because, maybe what crashed at Roswell was a German technology, and James Forrestal and the high-ranking military within our military-industrial complex at the end of World War II was aware that a major contingent of Nazis may have escaped to South America or Antarctica at the end of the war. In fact, there was a plan in 1942, 1943 called the 4-year plan, which specifically mandated the creation of a secret base in Antarctica in case the war went bad in Europe. So apparently a lot of very secret, high-tech, very sensitive technology was very likely being funneled to Antarctica at the end of the war. So, and also, few people talk about this, that the Germans had already developed turbojet stealth fighters during the war. They were never deployed, but they had built them. So it seemed like the Germans were developing all kind of prototype technology and then getting it out of Europe as fast as they could build it. Mm-hmm. So, they may have encountered Horton flying wings down there at the Antarctic, which would have flown rings around anything that Admiral Byrd and his team could have presented. So maybe it was flying saucers, maybe it was flying wings. Who knows?
Like they were testing their aircraft. Oh, go ahead.
There's another aspect about this whole thing that nobody ever talks about, and this I've just come across, is that Admiral Byrd was a Freemason. And as such, the Freemasons wanted to create the new Atlantis in North America. And that was the whole purpose of colonizing North America back in the 1700s. Well, also, the other thing is that the Freemasons were also looking for this Atlantean technology. So was Admiral Byrd's expedition to Antarctica to knock out the Nazi base, or was it competition with the Nazis to discover if Antarctica was in fact also the old Atlantis?
That's really interesting.
So there's this very, very strange Freemason component to this whole Admiral Byrd story that nobody ever talks about. Now, Admiral Byrd in, I think it was 1928, went to both the Antarctic and the North Pole, and on both those flights, they dropped Masonic flags on the poles. So they didn't claim it as United States territory, but they were claiming it as Masonic territory.
Jim, didn't they also do that on look, I know that some of the moon landings were faked, but on some of the real moon landings that did take place, did they not do the same thing with the Masonic flag?
I would absolutely guarantee. Well, the astronauts themselves were all Freemasons, so it's like, well, duh, of course they would do that. That's why they sent them up there. So there's this other, esoteric secret society component to all this, and the United States is not exempt from that. Our people going down there were Freemasons too. So what's that all about?
Well, are you guys affiliated with Freemasons? And I know my mother's side is Scottish Masonry. So, I'm just curious insofar as anybody here affiliated with them, because I am, and they were the good guys on my mom's side of the family. So,
and there was always in Solaris. I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but there's always there's always the faction of good and bad. I think within all societies, Bob Dean knighted me, and Bob Dean was a Teutonic Knight. Now you can look at that in many different ways. He was knighted by basically Nazis as a Teutonic Knight, right?
Well, that's changed. Lineage has.
There's the good faction and the bad faction of all this.
I agree. And before we get started, I just wanted to briefly, there are some questions in the chat I wanted to cover with you real quick. Let's see here. This is from Noodles5240. Is Aldebaran SP part of Sirius System and ironically part of the Dogon story, and where are the Nazis familiar with the Dogon? That's a question for you.
I have no idea.
Okay.
Aldebaran is the primary star, the brightest star in the constellation Taurus. So I don't think Sirius is part of Taurus. But I'm not an expert on astronomy, so you might want to do your homework and just compare where Sirius is and where constellation Taurus is.
Get a star map, and then also from Quiet Pilot we have. So then, why are they taking all our gold on the Earth? Apparently, that's the question. If there's gold elsewhere, what do you think their drive was for coming here?
Well, it was apparently it met their requirements for gold mining, and I'm sure logic would tend to suggest that they were probably mining gold, in all kind of different places and not just planet Earth. If you can travel the universe, you can mine gold wherever you can find gold. So it's like this may have been a very minor, sideline mining operation within the context of their overall mining interest.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Jim, I'd like to add something to that. I find it maybe plausible that during the time of the last passage of Nibiru, let's just Planet X, we'll just use that as the integer for topic for point of discussion here, is that their technology wasn't as advanced as it possibly would be today. So if they are on this outermost planetary binary system with our sun, and they're are able to come in close enough with the technology maybe available to them at that time, that they were still using some sort of maybe, I don't know what kind of rocket propelled propulsion to get here to the planet. And it always brings me back to the Nazca lines and the mountaintops being sheared off, looking like runways. That maybe that could have been very well possible at that time because their technology was limited. Just a thought.
Yeah. There's they may have relatively primitive flight technologies at that time by our standards.
Michael, did you have anything to interject?
Oh, I was going to say, going back a little bit, I've been always fascinated with the 1950s Space Brother contactees, like George Adamski and Freyo Angelucci. And what I've heard is that like with Adamski and them, these aliens that they were always meeting were always blonde and blue-eyed and Aryan-looking, and that they were actually these Germans from Antarctica, and they would just tell them, oh, we're from Venus or we're from wherever. They wouldn't tell them that they were, oh, we're a bunch of Nazis from Antarctica.
Yeah, right. What you really need to look into is George Adamski's connections with the CIA, and he was. There were some people who filed a class action suit against George Adamski back in the 50s or the 60s, stating that he had defrauded the American public. And Alan Dulles, the director of the CIA, intervened and would not let that case go to court. So, and I know that George Adamski traveled the world on like an ambassador passport that was supplied by the CIA. So it's like, was George Adamski and all his stories, was he just a disinformation front for other activities, some of which may have been to cover for the Nazis, who actually had pretty much taken over the CIA? with Reinhard Gehlen and his gang. So there's a lot of other extenuating circumstances with Mr. Adamski.
Well, also with Adamski and some of these other contactees in the 50s, a lot of them were centered in the Southern California area.
Right.
And a number of them all worked at Lockheed. I think like three of them were Lockheed workers. One worked at...
Right.
They had some weird connection to all this stuff.
Right. The thing is, and it goes back to Roswell. If what crashed at Roswell was German, that would have put the United States Defense Department in an absolute panic. Because it's like, we have just proven to the world that we defeated these guys, and now they've got high-tech flying machines crashing in New Mexico, close to our most sensitive atomic bomb development facilities, to our brand new strategic air command facility at Roswell. So it's like, if our most sensitive military installations are being compromised by Nazis, it's like, we don't dare let the American public know this. So at that point, you have to create a whole different disinformation campaign in case some of the flying machines that are being reported as UFOs are in fact German made. It's like the American public cannot be allowed to know that. So you have people like George Adamski and others who have been promoting this whole visitors from Venus or UFOs from outer space. The whole UFO from outer space disinformation campaign got started in that same era of George Adamski.
Jim, I have a question for you. How does Victor Schoenberg, fall into all this with the Thulean Vril Society?
I don't see Victor Schauberger as a real member of the Vril Society. He was kind of his own man. He was a naturalist, and he was a forest warden, but he's kind of like Nikola Tesla. He was brilliant. He would observe how the trout swam in the rivers and so forth, and he said, there's some kind of other mechanical component that allows them to swim effortlessly in water that should logically just wash them away. And they could always swim upstream, and he couldn't figure out how is it that they were able to do that so effortlessly. So he developed this really exotic perception of another variation on torsion physics. He got through being a naturalist and watching birds fly and fish swim, he was inspired to come up with another variation of torsion physics and torsion propulsion physics. And he was also hired by the Third Reich to develop the same kind of technology. But whether he was directly involved with the esoteric stuff that the Vril Society was working on, I tend to be a little dubious about that. And I think that was simply because, let me just finish it. These things were so compartmentalized within the Third Reich.
Just as it is here in the United States, right? I mean, there's no difference. They just, transfer of technology, absolutely. So maybe he was used as a pawn for bringing forth his technology, and then was simply hijacked by the Nazi Party.
Right, and he was definitely hijacked
to produce this.
Right, he was definitely hijacked because they told him that if he didn't cooperate with the Third Reich, that his family would be killed.
Oh, we have a caller here at 828. Caller, are you there?
Yes. Hello, Raven.
Hello there.
Oh, hello. This goes back to the original part of when your guest got on about the descriptions of the ships.
Okay. And what's your question?
Well, I was driving in Tampa, and Tampa's pretty flat, but I was on an overpass. Now, I looked over at Tampa MacDill Air Force Base,
Mm.
And it was just rather peculiar because it was like a donut shape without the hole, but it was clear cloud, esoteric or etheric, however you want to say it. And I just want to know, is there anybody that might know who can create that kind of issue, especially since it's over the Air Force Base, international airports, and whatever else goes on in Tampa, Florida. It was just one of those weird, peculiar, I couldn't get my camera in time moments, but it was there.
When was this?
About, I'd say November of 2010.
That recent, huh? Okay.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
is that recent? I mean, come on, things are moving kind of fast.
Well, you know, a lot of strange stuff was seen in McDill Air Force Base back in the 50s. So anything that's
This was huge, honey. This was literally county size. This thing was huge. It was not a small ship like with two passengers. This was like, oh my gosh, what the heck is transpiring now?
Yeah.
Because, you know, I've seen all the jets. I know all the income, outcome, whichever. But otherwise, it was just one of those things that when the veil lifted or whatever else happened, I'm like going, okay, I'd like to know where this is from and who might be, you know, joining our military this time. Because that's all where they do the drones and things in Afghanistan and all that. I mean, the conspiracies out there with
Okay, caller, can you hold on for just a second? James, did you want to comment on that insofar as what your take is on that?
My take is that anything you see like that near a major military base, I would say that's probably ours.
Yeah.
Oh, it was, but etherically, then we got major cloaking and all the rest of that. Everybody
exactly
wear. Put
well,
your
that's the technology that we've had access to since World War II.
Right.
Jim,
thank you for calling, caller. Okay, go ahead, Robert.
I just wanted to say, Jim, is that the TRB-3 technology, do you believe?
That's what?
The TR-3B technology.
Sounds like it, yeah. TR-3B is the big triangle-shaped anti-gravity ship that allegedly our government has.
All the nice toys.
It's called the Astra.
Cool.
And they make them as big as a football field.
Yeah, I've heard about those. And I have a little comment here that I just want to relay to you. The black stone may have to do with the philosopher's stone. It is the alchemy on how to make gold, and ALIA. They can make gold. That is why they based currency on gold. We were designed to mine it. That may explain the black stone Templars. And that was from Cynthia Marie Brewer, who left that comment. And I'm wondering what your take is on that.
Very possible. Very possible. I have never heard a direct link between the black stone and the philosopher's stone, but they're, you know, obviously the Templars with their esoteric and alchemical interests, this could be very much part of that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Jim, I wanted to ask you, what about, I hope I'm saying this right, anatomic gold?
Monatomic gold.
Monatomic gold. What about
that's a good question for Solaris.
What's that question again? I'm sorry, I was in the chat. Go ahead.
Explain to Robert what monatomic gold is.
Well, for me, I mean, it basically smooths out the neural circuitry in the brain, and it helps with your consciousness. And
no, but can you describe how it's made?
I think you do a better job describing how it's made, actually, James.
And it's a fine white powder, right?
Right.
Fine white powder.
Yeah.
Well, you take gold and you refine it down. You what is it, 3,000 degrees, and it changes the atomic structure of the gold itself. So what you have, what the alchemists knew, that they could refine gold into a fine white powder that is edible. It's digestible. And this is a technology that's been known ever since the ancient Egyptians. And it, if you ingest it, it can raise your consciousness, and it can make you much healthier, and can make you live longer.
the reason I brought that up, James, is because there's a relation or connection or a link between monatomic gold and Padre Pio, which supposedly witnesses said that he was actually able to levitate. And he supposedly ingested large amounts of monatomic gold. Now, I don't know. This is speculation. This is what I've heard. Could that be possible?
Well, anything's possible. I mean, the ancient ones, the ancient Egyptians, the ancient alchemists. This was the highest prized elixir in all the world, and we're so disconnected from this technology and this science that I don't know what the potentials are for this kind of alchemical
I would
mixture.
say it's a transfiguration on some level, but I do have a few questions for you in the chat room here.
Yeah.
And one's from Jer Bear, and it's, if the saucer theory was German designed and operating in Antarctica, then why did Da Vinci's paint ships in his artwork in the Mayan temple that had a man in a ship carved into stone? That's how it's written. So does that make sense to you at all?
Well, just because the Germans made flying disc technology during World War II doesn't mean that they had the exclusive creation of flying saucers. There's been, UFOs have been reported all throughout human history. So it's like there's the stuff that we've learned how to make, but there's somebody somewhere else who obviously possesses this same technology. And who knows where they're from, what their interests are, and, whatever it was that caught Da Vinci's imagination. And there's a lot of Vatican art, actually, over the centuries that includes strange flying machines. And it's like, so it tells me the Vatican is very, very much aware of this stuff.
I agree. And there's one more from Dragon Eyes 3 here. It's Solaris, what are you and the guests' thoughts on the Chinese mummies and pyramids, please? Anybody? James first?
On the who?
On the Chinese mummies and pyramids. Any thoughts?
Well, I haven't researched Chinese mummies very much, but with regard to Joseph Farrell and his research about pyramids, it would appear that there's a whole network of pyramids all over the planet, and that his take is that this is an ancient weapons system that was installed here by extraterrestrials. And if you go to his website, thegizadethstar.com, you can research deeper into his theories about the pyramids.
Very well said. Anybody have a comment on that? That's for anybody.
Just as far as I'm concerned about the pyramids that are, of course, they are all over the world. No question about that. They're being discovered now more than ever. But I would relate it more to as an energy source, for the planet. They were able to basically pull the energy out of, out of space. Condense that. Of course, I'm talking about the atomic structure of all this. They were able to recognize it, understand the frequencies, and use those frequencies to turn into energy, to basically have the technology that they did then to create what they did. This probably goes back to Atlantis and I hope I'm saying this right. The sister city of Atlantis, Mu. So, to me, that's how I equate it anyway, Jim.
Nice, Michael. You have anything? Oh, go ahead.
Let me just kind of expand on that a little bit. I think the point that Farrell is making is that the pyramids would be almost like the equivalent of Nikola Tesla's tower on Long Island that he built back in 1901. That yes, it could be used as a communication system. It could be used as a broadcast unit for free energy, or it could also be used as a weapons system.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Jim.
The flip side of that, everybody comes down on J.P. Morgan because he ordered Tesla to tear it down, and because he didn't want the world to have access to free energy. But the flip side of that is that Morgan may have been aware of the weapons potential of that tower, and he's like, we don't want you to just tear it down. We want to sequester this technology because we may have use for it later on. And then it was not too long after that, in 1908, if you recall, that a huge 500,000 acres of Russian Siberian forest was devastated by allegedly a meteor. But they could not find any evidence. They dug down to 188 feet and could not find any meteor fragments whatsoever at the center of that blast in Tunguska, Siberia. So the question remains, was that a practical weapons demonstration of Nikola Tesla's tower?
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Or Nikola Tesla's tower technology?
Well, I certainly have to say that I can't disagree with what you're saying. It's just, if we had access to the information, then we'd know, hey, absolutely. But it's all speculation, right?
Well,
Jim?
the thing is, you kind of have to back engineer your speculation, because now you look at the HARP and you look at scalar weaponry that we've developed, over the last few years, and say, well, okay, apparently Nikola Tesla's technologies have been exploited, have been implemented, and because essentially what you're doing with that technology is taking the fundamental energy of the planet itself and weaponizing it. It's like, you think our military-industrial complex wouldn't do that if they had the chance? I think they would.
Yeah, the essence of humanity, right, Jim? Greed.
Well, the other thing is it's like you want to create an entirely new weapon system that can be masked as act of God. So it takes the political, downfall or downside out of weapons technology, because it's like, gee, there's 1,200 people were just killed in the Philippines. Isn't that awful? It was an act of God. Well, was it an act of God, or is this the technology that we can engineer today?
Right, man, playing God. As far as the pyramids go, too, what comes to mind also is I see it as a beacon library and, of course, a location of transfiguration at the atomic cellular level, which, the mystery schools had a connection to and knew how to transmute to a higher overtone. And actually, that was part of their regeneration process. So that comes to mind as well. So not only can it be used as a force of destruction, but it was also used as a tool for regeneration.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really important and significant. And, I don't, like we talked about the history of things, I really don't want us to lose that cellular memory of what we are and what we are capable of doing, because it's phenomenal.
Well, that gets back to the monatomic gold, because there was a discussion, I read on the internet, where they would the adepts, the ancient Egyptian adepts, would fast, and then they would do this initiation thing in the chamber there in the Great Pyramid, and all they would ingest, the only thing that they would eat, would be this monatomic gold. Mm-hmm. But their bodies had to be acclimated so they could tolerate it.
Right, it's like calibration, yeah.
Right.
And I've also heard, Jim, that there's a resonant frequency associated with that monatomic gold within those chambers, which makes sense.
Makes perfect
sense. Right. Yeah. Sure. That's okay. That's the alchemical
transfiguration, maybe.
That's the alchemical concept of building structures that are resonate chambers. What's the word I want? Resonation chambers. That they resonate to the materia prima, the fundamental unified field energy of the universe, and it's like they're accessing this energy, they're manipulating, they're using it, and this is the ancient technology that we're just now rediscovering.
Mm-hmm. That's the chamber that George Van Tassel built out in the desert.
Yeah, right, yes, that's right. See, they have all these people that are dismissed as crackpots who are been working with this technology, and they're learning what it's all about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, no question. Frequency technology is absolutely proven, and I can attest to that because through Dr. Hulda Clark and Dr. Bob Beck's work. Through frequency technology, specifying frequency for disease. When you match its frequency, you eliminate it. How do I know this? Because my mother had lymphoma cancer. Right. I used the device created by Dr. Hulda Clark, specifically targeting the cancer frequency. Guess what? 3 months later, her cancer was completely gone. And I can name umpteen people who have purchased this product and followed the procedure, and guess what? They completely eliminated the cancer. And this not only works for cancer, it works for every disease known to man. And you can find all this information, by the way, on Dr. Clark's website.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there you have it. So it all. But everything you've been talking about, Jim, everything you've been talking about, Solaris, follows in succession. Frequency, harmonic wave frequencies.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. How about you, James?
Yeah, there's a great video called The Lost Secrets of the Sacred Ark by Lawrence Gardner. You can find that online. And he goes into great detail the history of monatomic gold and its practical applications. And it's a lecture. I think it runs an hour or so, but it's very informative.
Well, I tell you, James, I had the pleasure of ingesting monatomic gold when I was, inducted, and the one and only time. I mean, I don't know how it's physically altered me, but I'm certain that it played a part in my process of enlightenment. Put it that way.
Well, the way Gardner describes it, it realigns your DNA. The gold actually melds with the DNA in your body and repairs it. Mm-hmm. Yep. So I mean that in and of itself is simply extraordinary.
Right. I'm wondering what the shelf life is of monoatomic gold. I don't think you would know offhand, would you?
I rather suspect that it would have a fairly long shelf life.
Yeah, I would think so too, even if it's broken down like that. Yeah.
Because you've broken it down to its basic, most fundamental level, and I don't think you can break it down anymore. And it's well, I'd like to try some monatomic gold brownies.
Oh wow! Now that's interesting. Let me know what sector you wind up in.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Yeah.
So instead of the potted brownies, now it'd be monatomic gold brownies, and there would be a whole cascade of government official coming down on us just because of that.
Gee, I would be at your house for those.
Well, I was teasing Solaris. It's like you can go to the grocery store and buy gold metal flour, and I think, is that a play on words? Gold metal flour, because monatomic gold looks just exactly like flour. It's like it's even more, as I understand it, it's even more fine than actual flour.
Here's a question for you, James, and Michael, did you want to jump in? Go ahead, please.
Michael, you there?
I was just going to ask James what his thoughts are on the whole Billy Meyer Palladian thing.
Oh, you got another 2 hours?
Yeah, right.
Well, I can make another 2 hours now. Next time.
Well, like I said, it was the Billy Meyer case. I had the pleasure of meeting investigator Wendell Stevens in 1980 when he was in the midst of the Billy Meyer case. And so I got to see some of his research up close and personal before it ever went public. And I wouldn't be on this radio show now if it hadn't been for that experience. So it had a profound effect on me. And, whether the case is real or not, it touched something in me that it's kind of like, it's like the old movie Lost Horizon, where it's like you want to believe that somewhere out in space there's like a Shangri-La where there's a civilization that actually got their act together and that is kind and benevolent and spiritual, and it's all the things that we are not. And so in that sense, it kind of had a romantic appeal to me in that sense. But whether the Meyer case itself is real or not, I think the jury is still out on that one.
Yeah.
Well, doesn't that...
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Solaris.
No, go ahead.
Doesn't that almost depict, the book that was written by Len Kasten, Secret Journey to Planet Serpo? Because in a sense, that would have been the Shangri-La for us, because, there was a very, I put it this way. It was a very controlled society, but it was a very flowing society that it almost functioned as a commune. I'm not going to use the word communist, but as a commune, that there was a common purpose and goal.
Right.
To that. So
right.
In a sense, that would be
so
kind of almost like Shangri-La.
Right. So it's a commune in a sense that the power comes from the bottom up and not the top down.
Right.
The social order is designed that way, and everybody benefits from it. That's
I have a quick question from the chat for you from, I guess it's Joaquim. This channeled messages were that the Vril Society were then given to Victor Schauberger to create anti-gravity tech. I guess, is he confirming that question?
No, not to my knowledge. Victor Schauberger came to this information from a totally different line of study. Now, it may have been complementary to what they were getting from the Vril Society, but I tend to see Victor Schauberger as a separate entity altogether here.
Okay, thanks.
And that's just my take on it.
Right, and I just want to let everybody know we're getting ready to wrap this up real quick here, but I just want to make a quick announcement, and then we'll continue on for the next few minutes. But I just want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight, and everybody at Revolution Radio, of course. Chat room, he had some really good questions in there, and listeners and producers, of course, helping me out behind the scenes, and of course, the callers. Thank you guys for staying with me here. And stay tuned for Shiny Side Out with David Dunger and Mecky coming up next to sail you on into the night from down under. They always have a fabulous show. And, of course, my next week's guest is going to be Tom Carey. He's going to be discussing Inside the Real Area 51, Secret History of Wright-Patterson, and all that good stuff. So stay tuned for that. And we will continue on. Okay. So any final questions, Robert or Michael? You guys there?
Yeah, I'm here. Basically, James, being involved in this for as long as you have been involved, because I'm really, as far as, encompassing all this information. Yeah, I've been listening to it for a long time, but being deeply involved, I'm a newbie to most of this. In your perspective of everything that you've uncovered, you've disseminated, where do you see us heading socially right now in this construct that has been basically controlled and manipulated by a small group of people? Do you see us breaking out of this this whole social mess that these so-called masters have contained us in? Well, is that coming to an end?
Gee, I hope so. One of the things that I think, and this relates back to the whole thing about 2012 and the Mayan calendar and all that. The Mayans had a keen understanding of the fluctuations within the overall unified field, which the alchemists referred to as materia prima, and that the materia prima itself goes through these cyclic changes, alterations. And that manifests itself as changes in human consciousness. So if you go back and look at here's this Mayan civilization, and what was their whole focus of their science was to map out these subtle changes in materia prima, in the unified field, which would then manifest as alterations in human consciousness. So the whole thrust of 2012, December 21st, 2012, was not about earth changes. It was not about cataclysms. It was about the beginning of a major alteration in the unified field that will result in a major alteration in human consciousness.
Makes sense.
And I like to think that that is going to be for the better. But if you have all these esoteric societies here who are all obsessed with control and power, and that may mean the end of their obsession, that they can't maintain control over human consciousness like they used to.
So really materialism needs to come to an end, and spiritualism...
It will transform itself. It's not necessarily has come to an end. That sounds apocalyptic. I think it's going to alter. I think there's going to be fundamental alterations, and it's like, and how that's going to play out, I have no idea how that's going to play out. But my sense is that this is what the ancients were totally obsessed with mapping out this alteration that happens on cyclic basis in human consciousness. So that's what the whole 2012 thing was all about.
Right,
and it's going to unfold itself in its own way, in its own time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the DNA activation. It's all about that. It's not New Age, it's the ascension work, but it's a transfiguration, really. It's higher consciousness changing the molecular structure and the atomic structure of the body and the mind. It's all in resonance with consciousness and energy, emotion. It's really fabulous. There's a quick question, and I'm sure let's see here. Quiet Pilot's asking you, did Jim actually see a Pleiadian ship ever? And I believe the answer is, drum roll, please.
No, that's why I painted them.
That's right. I know I was going to answer that in the chat room.
Right. No, I was like, no, that's what drove me to paint them. I always wanted to see them. I wanted to see a Pleiadian beam ship parked in my backyard. And so since they weren't forthcoming enough to do that, I said, well, I'm an artist. I can... I'll just paint a picture of it.
Right. Beautiful artwork they are. And you've had a problem with your website. Can you just go ahead and give everybody your website one more time, Jim?
Yes, JimNicholsUFO.net. And I hope there's no problems accessing it.
They were having virus issues. Now, you might want to double check and make sure you're okay with that.
Well, I was on it earlier today and it seemed fine.
Yeah, so. I was on it okay also. So, okay. Just try it again, everyone, in the chat and the paintings and everything, beautiful pictures. And Robert and Michael, I really want to thank you guys for joining in tonight. And, of course, James, it's always a pleasure to have you on my show, and I hope to have you back.
Yeah, Solaris, can I ask you a favor?
Sure.
As soon as we're off the air, would you please call me back?
I sure will.
Thank you.
Yeah. I was going to hang on with you anyway, but yeah, I'll call you back.
Jim, it's been a pleasure talking with you again, my friend.
And Robert, how is Bob Dean?
Bob is hanging in there. That's why I said, we can chat tomorrow if you like. Just give me a call and we can chat.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in tonight. I'll see you next week. All right. Take care. Bye.
Listening to Revolution Radio.